Hi, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing?
Good, thanks. How about you?
Good. Let's start the second part, the second component of our lecture on journalism. Let's talk a little bit about some definitions: journalism, professional journalism, citizen journalism, and a little bit about the history of journalism.
That sounds good to me. Let's go.
Good stuff, good stuff. You know, the first thing that we might want to say about journalism is this kind of dissemination of information is especially important in a democracy where an informed electorate is necessary for the health of the nation, for the health of democracy.
But the informed electorate doesn't always make decisions. Others make decisions for us, our so-called elected representatives.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, because when we go to the ballot box, we need good information so that we can make good decisions about who to elect, who can then subsequently make good decisions for the health of the nation.
And on our behalf.
Well, and on our behalf, that's exactly right. And here's the thing, you know, especially recently, as we mentioned previously, with the most recent election, but I'm sure prior to that as well, we see some questionable journalism coming out in the mass media. And it's these major failures, whether you're thinking of the Iraq War, you know, the list is it's too long to even enumerate.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
right?
there you go. It's these major failures in the ability to adequately cover the news, which has given rise to
Citizen journalism.
That's exactly right. And the thing about it is this. Well, wait a minute. Okay, wait. Let me think about this. Did you know that journalism began, at least our first record of it, in Rome?
Really?
In about 59 AD. And it was an attempt for Caesar to make a record of what was going on, not only in town, but in the legislature. Interesting, isn't it?
Interesting. And now let's jump ahead to 1500, when, how quickly history goes by, doesn't it?
Bam! Like a blink in the blink
Johannes
of an eye.
Gutenberg invented the movable type press. And this led to all different ways of disseminating information. Before, we were restricted to people transcribing things by hand.
As Caesar's scribes did.
Right, right. And then all of a sudden with the movable type press, we were able to publish books and things like
We
that.
began to see the development of mass media.
Right, and journalism.
And journalism, that's exactly right. Let's talk a little bit about that. Journalism, how can we define journalism? Journalism was initially people writing in journals, hence the title, and also in pamphlets, which are like
Your pamphleteers.
That's exactly right, in the American Revolution. Probably the most famous, Thomas Paine, we can say was part of an effort through news dissemination to galvanize a feeling of revolt, revolution, and unity in the American colonies. And I would say this.
Was he successful?
It seems like he was. It seems like he was. You know,
Because we did have the revolution.
Apparently, yes, we did. And at the same time, even then, people were saying, hey, wait a minute, is this true? I need this to be fact-checked. I'm not sure they said fact-checked, but people were questioning the validity of things that people were publishing then. Additionally, those were oftentimes opinions. And we see that as part of the development of journalism. By the 1920s, journalism had shifted to the writing for newspapers, magazines, and printing information for the purpose of informing people, educating people. And even before that, we saw where news was being suppressed, and people who were printing the news were being persecuted, and then by the 19th century, even prosecuted, when we had the development of libel and laws. And, you know, after that, we then, in about the 1990s, saw the growth of citizen journalism, as we mentioned earlier, with the advent of social media.
Right. One thing about citizen journalism, a term that I don't particularly care for because it gives me a bad feeling, is when they say grassroots journalism.
Sure.
This makes me think about Haight-Ashbury, Greenwich Village, artsy-fartsy kind of stuff, like, oh, I'm going to do all the good for the world and everything like that. But it doesn't really apply, I don't think, and I don't like using that term to describe citizen journalism, because maybe in the sense grassroots means you or I are doing it at our home, sitting behind our keyboard, typing away, but for me, it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't fit that picture.
Well, that's, I think, probably a sentiment which many professional journalists would also share. Maybe you would prefer the term guerrilla journalism? Would you prefer participatory journalism? Would you like democratic journalism, or better yet, street journalism?
Actually, I prefer blogger, because it's just a question of semantics.
Okay, and there you go.
And bloggers are generally going to use social media as a vehicle to send out their own opinion on different things and put their own spin on it. And again, you have to fact check them as well.
It certainly is something to keep in mind, Mike.
Yes,
wonderful.
it is. Okay, with reference to our lecture now, we're talking about citizen journalism. And I think the country of Turkey is a prime example of how citizen journalism was a positive force. Turkey recently had some internal unrest, and the government attempted to suppress all forms of news and social media. And my question is, do you think that when the government tries to suppress social media, that it's for the good of the citizens, or it's good for the government?
And question number 2. We talked about citizen journalism, and Mike pointed out that that term, there are better ones. And I mentioned 5 other terms as a name for citizen journalism. What were those terms?
Do you want me to answer the question?
No, I do not.
Okay,
I just want him to turn off the camera.